Ahoj, ahoj, tady Martin Konvička, já vás vítám u další epizody podcastu 32 Bar Talk. V dnešní epizodě povedu rozhovor s basistou kapely GoGo Penguin Nickem Blackou, který přijede 28.4. do Sonocentra v Brně na Jazzfest. Budeme si povídat o tom, co budou na Jazzfestu hrát, zdali budou hrát něco z poslední desky a jak jejich hudba v poslední době vzniká, taky jak si to zkomplikovali s tím, že v jejich hudbě je čím dál víc syntezátorů a různých vrstev, takže každý z nich musí hrát na hromadu nástrojů zároveň. Mimo to se dotkneme taky toho, co si Nick myslí o Spotify, streaming services a podobných záležitostech. Tak si epizodu užijte a tady je celý rozhovor. Welcome, Nick. Hello.
Hi, nice to meet you. How are you doing?
I'm good. I hope you're doing well too. I'm glad you made the time for this little chat here. You're going to be playing in Brno at the Jazz Festival in a month from now, and I wanted to ask, firstly, what is going to be the music that the people can look forward to? Is it going to be something from the latest record, Necessary Fictions, or even the latest singles that you put out with GoGo Penguin?
So, Necessary Fictions came out last year, but then we didn't tour it right away. We had a bit of time, and then the first time we toured it was Canada and US run that we did, which finished in November last year. So we haven't really played the new material from this album in Europe that much yet. We did the first leg of a European tour, which was mainly France. So it's going to be a lot of material from Necessary Fictions because it still feels pretty fresh to us, and we still love playing it. It's not like we're tired of any of it, and it's for the new album. We might play one of the tracks off the new EP. We've just released something that's very electronic, which we're not going to perform live. It was just, a bit of an experiment, that one. But there is a track called Call to the Void, which is the title track of the EP. And I think hopefully we might be able to play that one. Rehearsal depending.
Yeah.
But yeah, so quite a lot of material from the new album. However, we've got 6 previous albums, I think it is now. So we obviously are going to play some older stuff as well from the previous albums.
So like a best of selection plus the latest material. Right?
Yeah, basically, yeah. It's kind of a nice problem to have at this point, but we can't play all of the material. So yeah, it's just trying to choose what we're going to do from the older stuff.
Yeah, so you got all the previous stuff in your heads, and you can choose wherever you like. Or do you choose like Keith Jarrett Trio at the beginning of the set, or do you do it the playlists like up ahead? Like at least rehearse it once to make sure that you can remember, because your music is much more of a intertwined kind of. It has to have its properties.
Yeah. Yeah, well, for quite a long time, we still did it very much last minute. But in more recent years, because some of the shows have got bigger and the production side of it is also a bit bigger, and we're not like a conventional jazz trio in a lot of senses. So it needs a bit more pre-planning, really. So yeah, we're not just going to do it on the fly, but I think I write the set lists. That's my job, which I quite like doing, and the other guys trust me to do it. And obviously, I show them and ask them. I don't just say this is what we're going to play, but it's yeah, that's how we do it. So it's probably going to be quite similar to what we've done on the first leg of the tour, but maybe a few things swapped around to keep it fresh for us.
You get it. I mean, there's on the latest record, the Necessary Fictions, there's features, on some of the tracks. There's guest artists, different ones, and also the Manchester Collective, which is an ensemble of musicians, right? So, if you doing these things live, are you gonna be doing some of them live as an instrumental version, or if there's a singer normally present on the record? So how do you approach that?
So we have talked about there's a track called Luminous Giants, which features Manchester Collective, and it's got eight-piece string section on it with a feature from a violinist, Raki Singh. It's quite difficult to achieve the same thing without them, but we have talked about maybe trying to do, a trio version of that somewhere down the line. But I think without the guests, it does sometimes lose that something. Particularly, there's a track called State of Flux, which I don't think we could really do without any strings. It just wouldn't have the same weight to it. So it's a bit of a tricky one, but we've been touring a lot with Dowdy Matsiko, who features on the track Forgive the Damages, which is the first one we've had with, a proper vocalist and with vocals. So he's been touring with us a lot. So it's nice to bring him up and do that one. It's something quite different to what we've done before. But with the strings, not at the moment. I think maybe down the line there's some talk of we might try and do a bigger project where we work with strings and try and take that out, but it's just an idea at the moment. It's a long way from actually happening.
Yeah, that was my question. I mean, it's not easy to when it's for the album. You can imagine almost anything, because you bring the musicians once to the studio and then you record it and it's fine. But touring it live is a whole different story. So, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Sometimes, some people, they don't care, some people are just touring. They just make it a smaller version and make it an acoustic version and they don't care. But I think, in the case of your music, it really has its place, like because it's the structure of your music is always like very well laid out in front of the listener. It's like a very fluent additive kind of feel to it, and the strings add something that the trio doesn't have any more hands anymore.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, obviously it could be done like using playback or a pre-recorded stems, but which maybe I think could be quite cool as well, but we haven't really looked into it yet. I think when we in the past when we've made records, it's always like, well, how are we going to play it live? That was always a thing. Even when we're trying things that were really adventurous, we always like, well, how are we going to do this? And I think for the last record, it was like, let's just make the record and then we can worry about that a bit later. And it did become a headache because there's a lot of things going on. There are moments where I'm playing the Moog grandmother synth and I'm playing it with my foot whilst I'm playing the double bass. There's moments in the set now where I'm doing backing vocals and playing more synth than I've ever done, really. I'm not a keyboard player really, but there's a track where I take over Chris's piano line on the synth, and then he actually plays a bass part on another synth. So there's lots of things to think about, and it's become quite complex. But we still always manage to find a way to do it. So I'm pretty sure we probably could come up with a trio version of some of the things, but it's just whether it's going to work and be as effective as the actual full thing. And as I mentioned, anyway, we've got so many tracks from other albums that it's not absolutely crucial to play all of them.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it always has to be a challenge, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think this most recent set for me is probably the hardest set we've ever played. And I think it's the same. There's so many things going on with what Chris is doing on the piano. It seems to blow a lot of people's minds that he uses like just gaffer tape on the strings to mute the piano, and he's doing that on and off in the set. People keep thinking it's a synth or he has a special piano. It's literally just tape across the strings, or different, foam muting with using his hands. But that's basically it. But then there's all kinds of other things going on. We've made life quite difficult for ourselves. But yeah, it's right. It's got to be a challenge.
No, but I've seen some of the most recent, I guess, videos from your live concerts, and I mean, you have the synth on your side, you have the Moog, and Chris also has like a synth on the side, but it's not like you're both like completely walled around by by these ridiculous amounts of synths and or anything. But I see that there's a lot to do. You know, you always have something to do, all of you.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
mm, I wanted to get more into like the overall GoGo Penguin aesthetic thing because
Mm.
you know, for me, it has had its sound since the beginning, basically,
Mm.
and it still does, and still somehow manages to keep it fresh. You know, the band you, which is, I think, after, as you said, you know, 6 records or 7, maybe. What it depends on what are you counting?
I think this last one was a seventh album, studio album, and then we have some live and EPs and stuff.
Okay, so that's plenty, right? So,
Yeah.
uh, being able to do that is a challenge, and it certainly is the case that, as you said, you know, it's not a jazz band in the traditional sense,
Mm.
uh, because you know the jazz musicians usually just they play the way they do, and they just take some material and just they play it. But these days it doesn't really work that way anymore, you know, because it's the genre has spread out so much. When it's original music, you never know what to expect, you know. You got musicians that are changing their aesthetic every record, you know, and or the context in which their aesthetic appears. But GoGo Penguin has been sounding like a GoGo Penguin since the beginning. I think it's always developing, but in a way that it has retained its face. I wanted to ask you about like, do you still have the same uh, ideas when you go into the studio to record a mixer recording, maybe, because that's the thing I think that makes it a little different, because of course the composition and the approach to the music, because it's inspired by other genres than only jazz, but the sound, the mix, and the production value of it is very special. And you know, do you still have that thing when you go to the studio and be like, okay, the drums have to sound more like that, and you know, if you get my question.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a few things going on when we're writing an album, and I've said this in a lot of interviews, but it's sort of a snapshot of who you are as a band, but also as people at that moment. So you can't help but be influenced by whatever's going on in life. You know, when you like a composition could come out, a ton of different ways, really. We
Mm-hmm.
have to choose a way, and usually it's about how we're feeling on that day and how, that direction that we wanted to take. So obviously, as we all do as people, as we go through life, we change slightly, but I think there's that, hopefully, it's nice that you said it, there's still that DNA of who we are in the music, even though things are changing. And we've added a synths and a bit of that, but it's not to totally take over the sound. It's really to I always sort of think of it like as a painter having just a new color on his palette. It's something that we can add that just brings something a little bit extra that we haven't had before, but not to totally swamp everything. There are some moments where we've tried stuff, but it's not going to absolutely take over. The piano, bass, and drums is still the core of what we do. But when we go into record, like our sound engineer, Joe Reiser, he's been with us right from the very beginning. He does all the live sound as well, so
Mm.
he knows us really well. And he's often there when we're actually writing the record, so he knows it inside out. So he's already kind of understands where we're going. But of course, we talk about it when we're in the studio. We know each other so well. We work on the mixes together, and me and Chris have got a lot more involved in the actual, well, and John as well, but he really focuses on the drums, I should say. So me and Chris have the kind of got really focused on the overall production, and then John has his notes about the drum sounds and what we want to achieve. But we've actually got now where we're in the writing process, we're already kind of have a pretty good idea of where we want things to be. There's a track on the new album called Living Bricks in Dead Mortar where it's got like a distorted drum sound, and
Mm.
we had that planned right from really early on with it, when we first wrote it.
Mm. Mm. Because it's a very special like musician thing, I think. Like some musicians are like able to practice ear training for years, to be able to distinguish between different chords and whatever, and be like, wow, very present on their instruments. But when you ask them to say which kick drum sounds better to them, they're gonna be either
Yeah.
like, I don't know what the question is firstly, or what do you want me to do? It's not my problem, And
Yeah.
I think all of you in your band, including your sound engineer, are people that are very aware of what kind of sound you want to bring, because
Yeah.
then it connects and it really, like, it starts playing, and you suddenly, like, right away, that this is not a like a you know uh, traditional jazz record. It has this cozy sound to it that kind of is intense, but it's not like aggressive, and all that, makes it, it gives it a personality of itself. So, mm, production wise, when you do you have like a home studio where you experiment with sounds and stuff when you write music, or do you write with your bass, or how do you approach that?
Yeah, well, I've got a room in my house where, I've got a little setup to do things, but usually it's me and Chris in Manchester because John, our drummer, lives in London. So we block out periods where he comes up to work with us. So when we're writing, it's often just me and Chris go to the studio. We might have an idea beforehand, or we try and work on something together. But we always record it and we make demos. And, if John isn't available to immediately give us a drum beat, which sometimes he's not because he has a life, then we'll try and program something just to give an idea and then he can make it his own. So we sort of do very bad, rough demos of how we want it to sound. We always have to say this to the label when they're like, "Oh, how's the new stuff sounding?" It's like we can send some demos, but they're really, really rough. So you've just got to try and see through that a bit. But the production side of it's become, well, it's always been quite important to us, really, from the offset. With Joe being part of the band, I guess we're quite unusual in that way. Maybe not now with the sort of new generation that's coming up who probably cross over things a bit more and think about production. But, traditionally jazz, it's always like, well, it's acoustic, it's the sound of the instruments, and that's all great. And it's true when we're recording, we do that as well, put a nice microphone in front of the bass and then beautiful microphones on the piano, and we record everything as naturally as we can. But the actual live side of it, the production side, is still really important. And in some senses, it's more like a rock show production or, like electronica, everything's very well thought about and how it's balanced. And it's difficult to amplify a piano to the level and the bass to the level of the drums to get everything to sit right. But we've spent a lot of time on it and it's definitely part of our aesthetic. We've really put the hours in and hopefully it kind of pays off.
Hmm. Hmm. No, it sure does. I mean, it's still a very pleasant thing to listen to behold. Uh, uh, it's gonna be our second time in Brno. I've seen you live the last time you were there,
Okay.
uh, and I remember it being a very very nice experience overall. But I remember it struck me that uh, at that point. I think I was still a student, maybe.
Mm.
And the thing is that your playing reminded me of EST, the Esbjørn Svensson trio,
Yeah.
which was a great influence on myself too, as a musician. And the thing is that, I recently heard in an interview that Chris mentioned Esbjørn Svensson as one of his influences.
Mm.
Mm, I think there's plenty of bands that are trying to kind of relive this sound, or like continue in this sound, but not many have made it far enough, or as far as you did. So you're one of the beacons that kind of reminds me of that sound, and I really find it nice and fascinating that it can still make jazz listeners happy and also people that don't listen to jazz at all happy. Was that a concept, like a premeditated, or are you just were like, well, we're gonna do this kind of music, that's what we like, and that's how we're gonna do it?
Yeah, it's exactly that. I
Okay.
think if you try and do anything to market some kind of appeal, like you're doing it deliberately, thinking, oh, well, this will be popular, or I think you're in real trouble then. I just don't think it's going to be very authentic. As you mentioned, Esbjørn Svensson was just a huge game changer for Chris, particularly. For me as well. I mean, I remember when I first saw them, it was there's a channel in the UK, BBC4, that started doing lots of music and arts stuff. And I remember one day seeing Esbjørn Svensson trio playing at the London Jazz Festival. And I'd seen them before, but this was a footage of a live gig. And I was just like, this is amazing. I was glued to the TV.
Mm.
And for Chris, it was just like, oh, he always wanted to play in like a band, but it wasn't just jazz. He's a classically trained piano player. He likes a lot of rock and electronica, and he ended up playing bass guitar because he just wanted to be in like a sort of rock band playing Nine Inch Nails or Green Day. I can't remember whatever he was doing, but so I think Esbjørn Svensson was just showed a path, that was different, where you could be in a trio, but it didn't necessarily have to be conventional jazz. It was this crossover, and it definitely paved the way for what we wanted to do. But in terms of what we do now, we honestly don't really worry too much about what anyone thinks. We just try and we just think of it like a band. We don't even think of it as jazz or anything. It's just like, well, we want to write tunes that we like and make music, and we're influenced by, rock, electronica, jazz, classical music, so many things. We're even inspired by, things in literature or recipes. And I know that sounds crazy, but sometimes it's just like a concept from a TV show that might somehow we interpret it in a musical way. So, it's a huge compliment that people sort of see that parallel between us and Esbjørn Svensson trio. But I do think it's quite interesting that we still get that comparison, because I think we're quite different now, but it still shows that there aren't that many trios really doing that different thing, that they're still the point of reference, because it's quite a while ago.
Yeah, it is. It's
Yeah.
fascinating to me too. I was thinking of this, and I was like, well, it really is the case, and but I think we all need it. We
Yeah.
all need the sound, this kind of approach. I mean, or of course, I mean, it's different, but you know, it has this less of a competitive vibe jazz
Yeah.
thing, whatever, acoustic music,
Yeah.
like more, as you say, more crossovery, but not in the sense that you want to necessarily break rules, but you want to make them work together.
Yeah. We just try and make the kind of music that we like, and the Esbjørn's for it's interesting because a lot of people say this. We're almost like a gateway drug now. We kind of get people into jazz because people say, oh, I don't like jazz, but I like you guys. And then maybe, down the line, they'll start checking out other things. I've had people say that to me, which is a huge compliment. They're like, oh, I started playing double bass because I saw you guys. And then they discover all the amazing double bass players in history that have come, and that's great. If I can sort of say this is a cool instrument, and there are also some really incredible players who are much better than me doing it, then that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's a wonderful. I think that's a gratification of its own.
Yeah.
Yeah, being able to bring people to a genre, or somehow open their views. That's great.
Mm.
Uh, I mean, I want to switch with the last question. I want to switch completely to a different world. I hope this doesn't get dark, but I want to ask you about your views on music and Spotify and all this stuff, because I mean, somehow, the music business has been developing in a certain way, and I want your opinion. I don't necessarily need a GoGo Penguin's statement,
Okay, yeah.
I just would like to know if you are thinking about it at all or not, because there's other musicians in the UK who are trying to break out of this like vicious cycle of streaming services and stuff like that, like James Blake and people like that. So I just wanted to ask if you have a point of view on that.
I think it's going to be very difficult to speak to any musician who who's going to describe Spotify as a good thing for them. It's a great thing for the listener, as a service, and we're all on streaming services. I've left Spotify now because I can't really condone a lot of their behavior. Um, but it's now I'm on Apple Music. It's probably that not that anything is that much better there, but I think it's slightly better. So we all do it, but yeah, I mean the sort of it's getting harder and harder for musicians and bands to make money. It's hard. Touring's more expensive. Everything's happening, and then we're getting into the realm of AI, and we don't know what's going to happen there. So, I mean, it's difficult, really. It does, in a sense, it sort of devalues the worth of the music. If you can just get anything on your phone, which is great, and just be like, "Oh, there's a new album out. I like that." No, I can't be bothered. And
Mm,
somebody spent a year, 2 years of their life trying to create this thing and pay for it to then just be casually dismissed is, I don't know. It's a bit devaluing to the music, and I think it's another difficult shift for the music industry, and I think it really is going to impact a lot of musicians who just can't make a living. So
mm.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
so you
difficult.
think it's gonna play out somehow, but we're not at the end yet, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's going to go somewhere, isn't it? I mean, there's always the argument that before streaming services, people said, well, the record companies would rip you off anyway. So maybe it's, the same, really. I don't know because I wasn't making records before streaming services, really. But it's the world we live in, and hopefully artists and musicians will always find a way,
Mm,
I just I think it's going to be sad if there's bands who are younger than us and who are trying to come up now and who can't do it because where's the money to be able to do it is coming from.
mm,
And that's a sad thing if all the music that's ever made is just based on a model of commodification of like it's a like selling anything, like
mm,
selling oranges or whatever. It's just like, oh, well, it's going to be very disposable. And the pop thing comes along, and somebody's just like, well, this will have a shelf life of 2 years, then we'll make something else. And then AI, there's problems with AI as well, because music companies and they just want to make money, a lot of them. I mean, some really care, but some of them just want to make money. So if there's a way of doing that through AI models, then they're going to do that. And I just feel like the people trying to make an artistic statement are going to suffer a little bit.
mm. I think getting back to something that you said earlier, that making something only as a musician, making something with a like intention to like changing your aesthetic with an intention to make money or to like
Mm.
approach different audience that is not necessarily your calling, aesthetic calling, just changing it based on upon those like weird uh things that you might want to get out of it, but it doesn't really is not really guaranteed. That's something
Yeah.
that is an argument for the music to still be happening. If you do it the authentic way, no one can say there's too much music. I mean, people are saying, there's so much music, we cannot possibly listen to all of it, because it's gonna be like there's gonna be 60,000 songs online every day, whatever. But for me, what I believe is that only a percentage of that is made with value and with that intention and with that authentic expression and with that energy, like as opposed to like majority of it is just probably like very fabricated and very quickly done. So the value is still in there, and I mean every person that makes music, I think, is good for the society. If you make music, you're a very even as a hobby, you're gonna be probably happier than people that don't. It's just like that.
Yeah, quite possibly. Yeah. I don't know. For me, it feels important to maintain your integrity in what you're doing, even if other people don't like it or whatever. That's fine. Not everyone's the same. Some people are going to love what we do. Some people are going to really hate it. But that's not for us to decide. I think we just have to do what feels right for us. And, if that's a path that we want to choose, then we're going to do that. And I think that's where good things come out of anyway. If you feel that way, somebody else hopefully does as well, rather than thinking, well, what does everybody expect us or want us to do, or what's going to be popular or sell records, then it's a different thing, really. And it's not the world that we are part of anyway. Then you're getting into more mainstream sort of pop things where it's a bit more manufactured.
Yeah. Well, it's a bit of a dark ending, but we're gonna have to wrap it up. I must thank you very much for your time once again.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's nice to chat.
Likewise. I mean, I hope your tour that is going to happen is gonna be very enjoyable. There's gonna be plenty of people that love live music, and they're gonna appreciate what you do. I wish it for all of us. And thank you once again, and hope to see you soon in Brno.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.